Hi, welcome to Noumena, the only place that's reverse engineered the College Board. We're going to show you how to solve these problems very quickly with mathematical precision and with 100% confidence. That means you no longer have to rely on the answer key, but purely on the power of knowledge. The mind is a powerful tool, and we're going to show you how to use it. Here's how it's done. Question 19. Only by tapping their last reserves of energy were the team members able to salvage what was beginning to look like a lost cause. Okay, you guys know the drill. We're going to go from A all the way through E, and we're going to check each letter for possible errors related to the underlined portion of the sentence. Are you ready? Well, let's get started. A, only by tapping. For this choice, we're going to test for modifier, idiom, and verb form.
Why? Because only these three could possibly contain an error. If you don't find any errors in any of these three choices, then A is good to go.
Good point. So let's take a look. Only by tapping. Well, do we have a modifier error here? What could be a modifier error? Let's see.
What is only by tapping modifying? It seems to be modifying to salvage.
Yeah, I agree.
And remember when we use by plus the present participle? In the previous slides, we explained to you that by plus the present participle, that's an ing word, by the way, is often used to describe a method or a way or a process of doing something. So in this case, they're explaining how to salvage. So they were able to salvage by tapping.
Yes, so that looks okay. What about idiom? Well, why are we testing for idiom? Well, we do have a preposition there, but we also have a very simple rule, which is do not chase idioms. Is this appropriate to follow this rule here?
I think so. I mean, of course, you do need to do an idiom check, but if you're not sure whether it's right or wrong, don't chase it. Just assume. What was that again, Brendan?
Do not chase it. Do not chase idioms. Assume that it's correct.
That's right. Assume that it's correct, because we'll feed it to you.
Right. And for verb form, are we looking at possibly tapping? Would that be appropriate?
Yes, it would, because remember this idiom as well, by plus ing or by plus present participle, really describes how something is done or how something is achieved. And in this case, it works fine because it's modifying to salvage.
Great. So it looks like there is no error in A. We checked for modifier, idiom, and verb form. So let's move on to B. B, word. Here we're going to test for subject verb and verb tense. This should be an easy one. I see my subject. Reserves. And that's plural. And it matches with were, which is also plural. Right, Anthony Silsini?
Only by tapping their last reserves of energy were the team members able to... Wait a minute. I think this is more complicated than we think.
How so?
I think this is an inverted sentence.
Oh, inverted sentence? Yeah, okay.
An inverted sentence is a sentence whose subject comes after the verb. So in an inverted sentence, you'll have the verb come first, and then the sentence's subject come afterwards.
Okay.
So we're lucky that reserves is in plural, because if that were if reserves were in its singular form, reserve, I think we may have gotten this question wrong.
Okay.
So let's look at our note here. Inverted sentence structure. Prepositional phrase plus intransitive verb. An intransitive verb is basically a verb that doesn't require an object. For example, sing. I sing every day. Sing would be an intransitive verb. Every day is an adverb. It's not the object. So I can just finish the sentence with I sing. or the form of the verb to be. So you can have a prepositional phrase, intransitive verb, or the form of the verb to be, as in this case, were. And then the subject. Now, since the subject comes after the verb, we do need to do a check on the subject and verb. Now, if you look at A, you'll see by is a preposition, and the prepositional phrase is only by tapping their last reserves of energy. That whole thing is a prepositional phrase. So if you're wondering, well then, what's their last reserves of energy? Well, that's the object to the verb form tapping. Remember we went over tapping as a verb form? So, and then comes the verb were. Now we have to do a check to see if our subject that comes after the verb is actually in its plural form, since were is in its plural form. And what will be the subject here, Brian?
I see it now. So then our subject is team members.
Well, that was a close one.
Yeah. I'm glad you caught that and we were able to avoid a possible error here in our approach.
Great, but let's not be so confident. Let's also do a verb tense check, because we've almost missed this question.
Okay, well, I'm not going to miss this one. I remember when we check for verb tenses, we should always look for words and phrases that will help us situate the time frame, right?
Absolutely correct. Sometimes those words come in the form of adverbs, but sometimes they come in the form of other verbs. Okay. So what would be the other verb that would set the time frame for the sentence?
Well, I see one in D, was beginning.
I think you're right. So the logic goes something like this. If they were trying to salvage what was beginning to look like a lost cause, clearly this happened in the past.
Yeah.
So if they were trying to salvage it, then the ability to do so would also have happened in the past.
Oh, okay, I see.
Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Yeah, so in this case it was a little tricky, because our clue, tense clue, happened to be a verb, not an adverb. But B and D seem to be fairly consistent in tense, so we can assume that the tense in B is correct.
And we already checked for the subject verb and errors, and we're good there too.
Right, and I don't know what other possible errors B could have. I think we've exhausted all the possible grammatical errors for this choice.
Yeah, I think it's time to move on to C. To salvage. Here we're going to check for, idiom and verb form.
Right. As we always say, don't chase idioms. Don't chase idioms. And in this case, you really don't need to chase idioms. But if you're wondering why, we'll give you a little idiom clue hint. Anytime you see the word able, that adjective often that adjective able often precedes the infinitive. The infinitive. In this case, the infinitive is to salvage. So don't get confused with the preposition to. To can function as a preposition, or it can be a part of the infinitive. In this case, to salvage is part of the infinitive. You have to take this as a set. To salvage. Two words are functioning as one word. You have to take it as a set. How about the verb form? I think we kind of explained it through the idiom, didn't we, Francis?
Yeah, because of our verb able, we need our infinitive to follow. It's pretty standard for this set here.
Are there any other possible errors that we could have with this choice?
No, here we're looking at idioms or verb forms, and if we were to change the verb form, then we would break the idiom. So we want to make sure that we have able plus our infinitive. So I think we're good here.
Okay then, let's move on to D.
What was beginning? Well, here we're going to look for quite a few possible errors here. Subject verb, verb tense, verb form, and subordination. Well, let's start with subject verb. What are we looking at here, Anthony Sosanim, if we're testing for subject verb?
Well, we want to see what the subject to the verb set was beginning, the multi-verb was beginning would be. In this case, it's what.
Okay.
And that seems to, it doesn't seem to be replacing any noun here. It doesn't seem to be functioning as a pronoun, but rather starting a noun clause. So I think what in the singular form matches was beginning. So I think we're good here.
Okay, and verb tense?
Because be, again, in the verb be in were is in the past, I think the verb tense checks here. Remember we did this check?
Oh, we did.
Yeah, so I think the verb tense works here as well. How about the verb form, Brian? What is the present participle after was? Is that better than the past participle was begun?
Yeah, because here it's something that's starting to look like, but it happened in the past. So it's progressive. So we need the present participle here after was. If it was our past participle, what was begun to look like?
I think then beginning to seems to be also an idiom.
Yeah.
And what was begun to doesn't seem to be very idiomatic.
No,
but not only that, was begun would be written in the passive voice.
Oh, then we have another error here. Not a hard error, but something it's more stylistically wrong. Again, as a note, guys, on the SAT, if you can avoid the passive voice and passive construction, you want to avoid those and go for active verbs.
Right. Again, you said that perfectly, Brian. What Brian Sweeney said is the passive voice isn't necessarily wrong. It's just inferior if the active voice could be used. So I think the verb form using the present participle with the helping verb was works just fine here.
So we check for subject verb, verb tense, and verb form for this error. What about subordination?
Well, what subordination really is a way that we can change sentences to fuse into another sentence. And oftentimes we can change the original sentence to be used as a modifier in the second sentence, or as an object, or the subject in the second sentence. So imagine there were two sentences here, converting one to play the role of a modifier, or an object, or the subject of the second sentence is what we call subordination. In this case, it seems to be that what was beginning to look like a lost cause, if you look at the note up top, is functioning as a noun clause. It's functioning as the object of the infinitive to salvage. So, does this noun clause work, Brian?
It looks like it works to salvage what was beginning to look a lot. Yeah, it seems fine to me.
Right, because it's answering to salvage what? And the noun clause answers
tells us what.
Tells us what. So clearly, it's a direct object of to salvage. So I think we're good in D as well.
So then that leaves us with no error.
And I think we can confidently circle this answer choice because we went through all the choices and we were able to exhaust all the potential errors, and now we can confidently circle E. Now note, again, this was an inverted sentence structure. So if you thought that their last reserves was functioning as a subject of the sentence, you got lucky because the phrase could have read their last reserve, and you would have gotten this question wrong. So the original sentence is really, if you look at the bottom, the team members were able to salvage what was beginning to look like a lost cause only by tapping their last reserves of energy. What the College Board did was they flipped the sentence, and they flipped it in the way that 19 is written, only by tapping their last reserves of energy were the team members able to salvage what was beginning to look like a lost cause. So I hope you had a better understanding of inverted sentence structure through this exercise or through this question.
I know I do, that's for sure. Noumena, empowering mind.